Hello, folks. Welcome into a new version of Indaba Africa. Something a little bit different here today as we talk about events transpiring around the world in the news. Today in the news, here in the United States, lots of big news taking place. Presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, is suddenly interested in buying American campaign. The Centers for Disease Control has decided not to revise school opening standards. Beyonce's Blacklash. Shepard Smith joins CNBC's crew. The Supreme Court of the United States determines that eastern Oklahoma is Native American land. CNN gleefully and happily, excitedly celebrates a court decision from the Supreme Court regarding the tax records of sitting President Donald Trump. Student visas in the U.S. are in the news as the U.S. government sets to limit those who want to attend school through non-resident courses. Dan Bongino goes off. And in South African news, former Protea stars Deepanar and Simcox go off on Black Lives Matter. Well, folks, welcome to Indaba Africa. This is Chris. I don't think anybody's here. It's just me at the moment. So let's see if anybody tunes in to hear about the news of the day and what's going on. Since I didn't list this event as taking place. Well, there's a few folks. Hey, welcome, folks. I guess some notifications did go out. Did you catch the music or did you miss the music? Did the music come across? Suddenly people are flying in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, good to see you guys. What do you think of that opening? Is that all right? Does that do the trick? Is it off the mark? Something a little bit different there. Thought that I would try. If you guys like that or not, let me know what you thought about that. We're going to talk about the news here. Wasn't planning on doing this session. Was feeling a little melancholy today. Lots of other things to do. And I decided, Ashley liked it. Okay, great, Ashley. Feeling a little melancholy. Wasn't too sure I was going to go ahead and do this session. But in the end, decided, why not? Let me knock it out and maybe keep it to an hour and maybe do a later stream later this evening. Anyway, so like I said, I didn't announce this. So I guess this kind of test whether the notification system on YouTube actually does work. We know it's problematic at best. Well, folks, let's say hello to everybody before I start talking about the news here. I wanted to take a look at who's in the chat because we got some folks who've poured in here. So thank you so much for that. Skulk is here. I'm doing okay. A little melancholy today. Midlife manic. Okay, welcome. Sky Greg T. Gareth, Keith Alderson. Hey, Keith. Ashley, Kyle, good to see you. Nigel, hey. Jason's here. Chris, was that Chris or show? Okay, Christo, missed the music. Well, I'll play the music again as I start to read the news. What I need to know though is whether the level's okay. Sounds like a news intro. Internet is shoddy today. Yeah, it's supposed to be a news intro, but it's I'm playing it on my PC. When I usually play music and I'm doing a transmission, I'll play it on a laptop because sometimes the data g's processed and it chops up. So how did it sound? So Keith got the music and the opening news. Okay, so I'll redo it quickly if the people who missed it, we give it a second here and talk about it. But just it's a new trial, trying something out, something different today to see how it goes. But anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. This is Chris with Indaba Africa here in central Pennsylvania with hair that is too cool to be brushed. That's right. I didn't even bother. Just it's going crazy here. So letting it do its own thing, my hair. So let me see what we got here. So could do with a 5-10 minute advance warning. Okay. Nigel says too cold to sit in front of the computer. Bed is best place. Possibly going, load shedding. That sucks. Erica, you came in late. Well, you did miss it a lot. Okay. Keith says the sound was spot on. Okay, great. So I'll keep those levels. I wasn't sure if I set the desktop audio levels to a lower level. So I'm hearing it loud here, but I don't know how loudly you hear it. So without a mixer, I'm going to set up a virtual mixer sometime soon, but I don't have one right now. So yeah, the idea was just to kind of talk about the news and get folks up to speed here. A lot of big news breaking here in the United States today, and so I want to cover that. So I'm going to do it again, okay? You guys, give me an indulgence here. I'm going back to being the news presenter here very quickly. So let me put my notes in front of me so I got the right stories here, and I'm going to cover this. Okay, here we go. All right, you guys ready? If you got your IR, shake the hair. My IR. Not too sure what that means. Anyway, all right. So let me get back to this then. Okay. Where are the if you got the if you got the hair shake, if you got the hair shake, got it. Okay, all right. So I'm going to do this again, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to you're not hearing things, you're not seeing things. This is the reopening. We're going to reopen and see how this goes. Okay. Let me. The problem is I don't have quite the right space here to do this. Okay, so let me work on this. All right, here we go. So I'm going to come back and we're going to do the open again. Turn my camera off. Oh, you like the shirt? Yeah, it's a rugby shirt. It is kind of cool. I'll stand up. Well, let me stand up now before we do that. So there you go. Long sleeve. Yeah, there you go. Good quality, overpriced, but I got it before they sold out because when they finally cut prices on the Rugby World Cup clothing kit lines, this was gone. So I'm glad I bought it. Paid a lot for it though. All right, here we go, folks. We're going to do this again. So you're not seeing things. Look like a chemistry professor. Yeah. I look like, what was it, Doc? What was it, Doc? What was his name? The Doc from Back to the Future. Christopher Lloyd. Okay, so we're going to start over again here. So here we go. Let me get back to the Indaba Africa opening. All right. Take myself off. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Translating the News here on Indaba Africa. Chris Wyatt coming to you live from central Pennsylvania. Top stories here in the United States today. Democratic hopeful former Senator and Vice President Joe Biden has suddenly discovered that he's interested in buying American. The Centers for Disease Control have decided not to revise school opening guidelines despite pressure from President Donald Trump. Beyonce's backlash. Beyonce takes a lot of criticism after cultural appropriation of African traditions and styles and setting back the narrative on Africa. Shepard Smith, the former Fox presenter, has joined CNBC Network. The Supreme Court of the United States today decided that eastern Oklahoma is Native American land, throwing into confusion a century's jurisprudence and court cases now up in the air. CNN gleefully celebrates the court decision that makes it possible for the government to take a look at Donald Trump's tax records. Student visas in the news here in the United States as Department of Homeland Security and Immigrations and Customs Enforcement have been directed to not allow students to stay in the United States who attend only virtual classes. Dan Bongino goes off on mask wearing, and former Protea stars Deepanar and Simcox go off on Black Lives Matter nonsense. Welcome in today to Translating the News on Indaba Africa. I'm Chris. Let's talk about the news. All right, how was that? How was that, folks? I don't know if it had anything just coincidence or people just finding out about the stream, but we went from like 20 people to 50 people in the stream. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Something a little different today. Thought I'd try that. Maybe a new program on here to go beyond stray voltage, since we do talk about the news quite a bit. Anyway, so sounds like Star Wars intro. All right, well, let me catch up on all the chats here, and then I'll get into the news discussion. Okay, so let's see. Skulk is here, Midlife Manic, Sky, Greg T, Gareth, Keith, good to see you. Morton, Christy, hey. Kyle, Nigel, Jason, Christo. Oh, well, Christo, now you've heard the music, right? Okay. Nigel, Skulk, Erica. Who else we got here? Variable Vision, Ashley, Tertia. Good to see you, Tertia. And you're the one who liked the color of the shirt. Variable Vision, chemistry professor, I got that one already. Hendrik de Klerk says, we need Reese to tune your hair. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but I'm not going to paint it pink. Maybe purple. And it says, good evening. If the rest of viewers, cold evening. Yeah, it is cold in the mid-rand anyway. I don't know about the rest of the country. Pinar van Vijk, good to see you there. Who else we got? Got away from me again. How does that happen? It's very frustrating how this works. Dogbreaker's here. Hey, how's it? It's pretty good. A little melancholy today. Peter Peterson, good to see you. Wrapped in blankets. Wow. Okay. Cheers. Cool music. Jason likes music. Great intro with the news flashes. Good evening, Tunes. Good to see you guys here. Oh, well, folks, thanks for tuning in. All right. So let's get to the news and talk a little bit about events taking place here. For those who may or may not have heard some of the events here, I want to cover a few of the news items, talk about that have happened in the last 24 hours or so, some a little bit more than that. So one of the decisions took place here is the Supreme Court ruling on New York prosecutors' request to see Donald Trump's tax records. Now, the fact that CNN so breathlessly devotes undue attention to a minor matter while completely ignoring Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton's amazing stock market brilliance, as well as Nancy Pelosi's millions out of thin air, is quite pathetic. They missed the point entirely. While elected officials around this country sit back and allow American cities to burn as a consequence of their contemporary actions in office at this moment and their failure to do their sworn duty in providing for public safety, they suffer no consequences. But the left is obsessed with Donald Trump's historic tax returns from before he became president in the midst of an armed insurrection. Why? Well, the problem here is that frivolous lawsuits unduly tie up the chief executive for matters unrelated to his term in office. And this nonsense will hamstring all future presidents of the United States. From the moment they enter office, they will be facing a litany of frivolous lawsuits from political opponents seeking to distract them from the job at hand. We've seen 3 years of this, not for tax records. We have seen the tax records issue, but we've also seen it for fake Russia collusion, for fake Ukraine intrusion, for fake this, for fake that. Fantasy, fiction, made up nonsense, none of which is true, and it has diverted and distracted the President of the United States from his job, his main task. Now, despite all this smoke and mirrors that's been put on by the left to undermine and destroy the domestic tranquility and the foreign reputation of the United States has marched on, has soldiered on, and before the Chinese Wuhan coronavirus, we actually were on a great glide path here to success. Wealth disparity was dropping significantly. Unemployment was at amazingly low levels, record number of people employed in the workforce, highest levels of workplace participation in decades. The United States was back on a glide path. We had gotten rid of the inefficient, ineffective, and a policy with NAFTA that did not protect our intellectual property and copyrights to the degree they needed to, and came up with the USMCA, which is now going into effect, despite the fact that little temper tantrum, wet nappy Justin Trudeau could not be bothered to show up for the meeting with Donald Trump and the Mexican president to celebrate the treaty. Nonetheless, it's still taking place. China has been forced to back down on their capricious and misleading and dishonest practices when it comes to actual bans on imports and artificial bans that have kept U.S. and other countries' products out of China to the benefit of China and the degradation of everyone else. All of this has been happening in the midst of these made-up stories. Imagine if we had a president who didn't have the drive, energy, and resolve of a person like Donald Trump. The entire administration would have collapsed under the weight of these frivolous lawsuits. From the fake Muslim ban right out of the gate, one fake lawsuit after another. Now, this was directed at his personal tax records, which have no bearing whatsoever on his term as President of the United States. So anyway, so that's what's happening there. The Harvard University, as well as MIT, Massachusetts Institute for Technology, and Northwestern University have filed a lawsuit to seek to get a temporary restraining order and permanent injunction to bar the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement from enforcing federal guidelines, which now say that students who are living in the United States but only attending online courses not be allowed to stay here. Now, in the face of a global pandemic and an armed insurrection in the United States, not particularly a bad policy. However, it's being attacked as these greedy universities are more concerned about their revenue flow than they are about their students. Now, if they're concerned about their students, then they'll find an effective way to hold in-person classes, at least for the students who are here on visas, who are not Americans and are here by the grace and goodness of the United States. But no, we're going to turn this into a political issue and another frivolous lawsuit. Now, there is, I think, merit to the issue that the administration should have thought more seriously about this policy, or at least made exemptions for students already enrolled at university who have previously attended in-person courses, who will now be forced to sit in their dorms or their homes, wherever they're at, and not attend in-person classes because universities are callow and unable to imaginatively think about ways to have in-person courses. Yeah, that should not be a penalty for students who are here. But if, for instance, you're an international student and you were planning on coming to go to Harvard in the fall, but Harvard refuses to have in-person classes for you to attend, then there's no reason for you to be here. None whatsoever. You can do your distance education abroad. Now, if you come from a country that has poor network, that's another consideration, but that's up to the university to find a way for them to let you study coursework. Right. So that's also taking place here in the United States. Now, I mentioned this previously, this shameful and disgusting behavior of Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, disabled combat veteran, who has threatened to block the promotion of over 1,000 senior military officers. We're talking about lieutenant colonels and colonels, most likely. It's not been disclosed who they are, but looking at the numbers in the Army, that would be about the right number, is lieutenant colonels and colonels, or perhaps it could be majors, but it's most likely lieutenant colonels and colonels. Why? Because she's not satisfied that the executive branch didn't put undue pressure or bully Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, whose conduct exposed him for the hack that he is. And now perhaps he's free to go become the defense minister in the Ukraine, which he so happily covets, as he gleefully and happily shared in testimony before the Senate. Lingering rumors of New Zealand Rugby Union planning to abandon Super Rugby appear to be true, ladies and gentlemen. Southern Hemisphere Rugby's United Front could soon be over. Previous rumors had the Kiwi Rugby Union negotiating with an American backer to exit the Super Rugby competition, which was in its 24th year just this year. Yeah. Super Rugby's parent SANZAAR, which is the South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Argentina Rugby Union, is comprised of Argentina, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, as I just mentioned. Now, they also own the Southern Hemisphere Test Series, the Rugby Championship. But if Super Rugby collapses, about the only thing left for SANZAAR to do is to oversee the Rugby Championship. Now, this has been something, quite a long story here. Super Rugby's been a complicated affair with constantly changing, expanding, and contracting league size, going from 12 to 14 to 15 to 18 teams, back to 15, and the overextension of Super Rugby by including Japan and Argentina in it, creating an already difficult situation in which teams must travel across the Southern Hemisphere to travel even further. It's caused a lot of problems. It's weakened the league. The talent base has been diluted at times, and it's been difficult, as well as the fact that in Super Rugby, they reorganized the league on various occasions and set it up at one point so that you only played teams within your own country conference. So the New Zealand teams only played each other, the Australia teams only played each other, and South Africa played with Argentina, and then Japan played in I think, in the Australia League. Very complicated, made it very difficult to follow. Also, it kind of set like a quality tier. Teams weren't competing against the best until the playoffs, and it resulted in obvious. Now, with South Africa's rugby franchise being freed from Super Rugby, which appears to be the case, most likely, these teams will be able to perhaps join Premiership Rugby, the top league in Europe and the United Kingdom. Pro 14, kind of an important league, but a little bit smaller. And you've already seen the Cheetahs and the Southern Kings join that league a couple years ago. Or perhaps even France's top 14, if it's willing to take on a new club from South Africa or two. Should be interesting to see, but very disappointing to see Super Rugby die a slow death, which appears to be the case, what's going to be happening now. So let me, before we get further news, catch up with what people are saying. All right. 37 degrees in Thailand. Ooh, that's warm. That's Celsius, I presume you're talking about. Marabani's here. Good to see you. The Dodgy Idealist. You guys must have been on Roman's stream, so thanks for coming for Roman's stream if you did that. That's why Boris implemented the order to stop people like Corbyn from doing nonsense like this. Let's see. Supreme Court approved going after Donald J. Yeah, I did. I mentioned that, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. Keith says, I was just chatting with a friend here in the UK with the local elections decades ago. They used to use spurious issues to tie up their opponents. Yep, exactly right. 40K for distance learning at Harvard. Wow. Yeah, that's correct. Let's see. Variable vision. Will the U.S. implement any special measures to protect Chinese dissenters that are being targeted by China's Operation Fox Hunt? You know, I don't know if we will. I wouldn't be surprised, though. But I am actually very surprised to see the United Kingdom offer residency to all residents in Hong Kong if they want to come to the UK. That surprises me. Remember, the UK is a white country led by white people. So according to Cyril Ramaphosa's definition, by nature, they're racist. Why would they dilute their whiteness by allowing 3 million ethnic Chinese to flood into the UK? How can these racists allow that to happen? Well, obviously, they're not racist, and obviously this narrative is stupid and nonsense. Anyway, so let's see what else we got here. Pinar says it was great when it was 12 teams. Our teams must go join the Pro 14. But the Pro 14 is good, but it's not as good as the Premiership. That's a better quality league with more top players. Both are good. I think they should probably split between the two of them. I think probably the best bet would to see one team go into, if you're going to go in the Northern Hemisphere, one team join France's league, so it takes them to 15. You already got 14 in Pro 14. 15 is probably the max there. Put one team there, and I'm not so sure about Premiership, but somebody's going to lose out. We're not going to see the Griquas playing in Super Rugby. We're not going to see them playing in one of these conferences. Conference is rubbish. You haven't won until you've beaten the Satyrs. Yep, there you go. It was cock funny when Eddie Jones said New Zealand had the 3 biggest academies in the world, Samoa, Fiji, and Tonga. I missed that, Pinar, but that is absolutely right. You know, it's funny because we saw Hansen always complaining about the Pacific Islands. Well, he doesn't care about the Pacific Islands. What he cared about is his pipeline of talent coming in, because he's bigoted and biased and wouldn't let New Zealanders play. He's only bringing in the Pacific Islanders. So anyway, Quentin says, thanks for the news. We remember, what was that? I missed that there. Just got ahead of me. Let me see. UK is offering asylum. Great news. Wasn't aware of it. Yes, they are, Variable Vision. They're offering it to any Hong Kong resident. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to work out. Brian Hurd, UK, a white country. Is there an update on draining the swamp? No, it's not draining. There's talk of a Pro 16 drop. It's too bad. South African teams pick up the other 4. Okay. That would be interesting. That would make a lot of sense if you did that. If you did it that way. Ben Hashem says, green looks better on me. Yeah, Lynn says, please smash the like button. Well, thank you for that. Please smash the like button. But ladies and gentlemen, there's a really huge story here that I need to bring in. Let me see if I can get this to come up. My browser here. Really need to talk about this, and we'll see if it comes up. No, see, that's not it. Okay, let me delete that. Okay, so, yeah, what I need to do is add a new window here very quickly because I must have lost it when I was rebooting some things here. But anyway, so this is browser, and we're going to use this for the news, and I'll talk about these news stories as we go along here. So let me get this up here. Here we go. All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court has determined that the eastern half of the state of Oklahoma is Native American land. Wow, 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 wow. Well, the Supreme Court ruled that a huge swath of the state of Oklahoma is Native American land for certain purposes, siding with a Creek Nation man who challenged his conviction by state authorities in the territory. The 5-4 decision was authored by Justice Neil Gorsuch, the supposedly conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch, who clearly doesn't speak from a conservative position here. The case sprang from conviction of Creek member Jimmy McGirt, who was convicted by an Oklahoma court of raping a 4-year-old child on land whose ownership was in dispute. His argument was that the state of Oklahoma had no authority to prosecute him because Jimmy McGirt was sitting on Native American land, which meant federal land, which meant that the state had no authority to prosecute him. The court's decision today has ruled that a huge swath of the state of Oklahoma is for Native American land for certain purposes. Not for property rights, but for certain purposes, siding with a Native American man who challenged his rape conviction. Yeah. The 5-4 decision, with an opinion authored by Justice Neil Gorsuch, endorsed the claim of Muskogee, or Creek, it's 2 different names. The English term for the Muskogee is Creek. The Creek Nation to the land, which encompasses 3 million acres, including most of the city of Tulsa. The decision means that only federal authorities, no longer the state prosecutor, can lodge charges against Native Americans who commit serious alleged crimes on that land, which is home to 1.8 million people. Of those people, 15% or fewer are Native Americans. So 3 million acres, in which only 15% of the population are Native American, have been determined for certain purposes, legal in this case, to be Native American land. Interesting. Yep. The conservative justice was joined in the majority by the court's 4 liberal justices, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. By the way, Stephen Breyer was supposed to have been a conservative justice. Remember that? Yeah. Chief Justice John Roberts dissented, as did fellow conservatives Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh. In his dissent, Roberts warned that across this vast area now deemed to be Native American land, the state's ability to prosecute serious crimes will be hobbled, and decades of past convictions could well be thrown out. On top of that, the court has profoundly destabilized the governance of eastern Oklahoma, Roberts wrote. The decision today creates significant uncertainty for the state's continuing authority over any area that touches Indian affairs, ranging from zoning and taxation to family and environmental law. None of this is warranted. What has gone unquestioned for a century remains true today. A huge portion of Oklahoma is not Creek Indian Reservation. Congress disestablished any reservation in a series of statutes leading up to Oklahoma statehood at the turn of the 19th century. The court reaches the opposite conclusion only by disregarding the well-settled approach required by our precedents. Now, this case was brought by Jim C. McGirt, who was convicted by an Oklahoma State court of raping a 4-year-old child in 1997. He was sentenced to 1,000 years in prison plus life for the crimes. McGirt, a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, had argued in state's courts that Oklahoma lacked the jurisdiction to review his case because the crime took place within the boundaries of the Creek Nation's historic territory. He had appealed to the Supreme Court after state courts rejected his appeals. Ladies and gentlemen, this is absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. Can you picture this for a moment? Let's put this in perspective. Let me equate this to a South Africa situation. The Khoisan nations approach the Constitutional Court in South Africa and say that the ruling African National Congress has no authority to prosecute crimes that take place in Khoi and San lands, of which they claim the entire Northern Cape, or most of the Northern Cape, and part of the Western Cape as traditional land. The Constitutional Court reviews this and says, in fact, that is the case. So now anyone convicted of a crime by the province or national courts could have their decision thrown out. This is insane, absolutely insane. how does the Supreme Court come up to this conclusion? It doesn't make any sense. As Chief Justice Roberts stated, there were a series of statutes which changed the status of that land. Is the Supreme Court saying that because someone once had a claim to something, they can claim it into perpetuity, whether they sold it, lost it through conquest or other means? No, this is bizarre, bizarre, bizarre. Anyway, yeah, this is absolutely crazy. We'll see what happens. Yep. Under our Constitution, states have no authority to reduce federal reservations lying within their borders. Just imagine if they did. A state could encroach on the tribal boundaries or legal rights Congress provided, and with enough time and patience, nullify the promises made in the name of the United States. That would be odds with the Constitution, which entrusts Congress with the authority to regulate commerce with Native Americans and direct the federal treaties and statutes, is what Gorsuch wrote. The problem with that, Gorsuch, is that this is not native land. It's been decided long ago. And your decision is creating all sorts of chaos. There's going to be real serious problems here. Serious problems, yeah. Chief Justice John Roberts, perhaps next to Iraq, George Walker Bush's worst decision. All right. Let's see what else we got here. The reason the traitors act against Trump is because they have become corrupt, evil, and have much to hide when it comes to. I agree with you, Ben Hasham, for the most part. The Wizard, hello, good to see you there. Brian Hurd, I already mentioned that. Green looks better on me, thanks, Ben. A nice haircut. Europe was never going to put forward a rugby, football, cricket, or any other sport team. Obviously, federal ambitions. Yeah. There are actual Cro-Magnon skeletons in those Native American mounds. The Smithsonian has been covering it up forever. Yeah, there's discussion about that. You've got the skeleton that was found out in Washington State. Daniel Prinsloo says, howdy, I dig the hairstyle. Are you perhaps related to Boris Johnson? Yeah, maybe I should dye it blonde, bleach it blonde, see what happens. England giving Hong Kong resident UK, but not for South African farmers facing untold violence. Yeah, Nigel, that's a very fair point. Fascinating that, isn't it? South African farm workers and farmers are being butchered, and the UK is silent on that, yet it's going to offer 3 million Hong Kong residents. Yeah, anyway. All right, the Boers and the Jews, only folk to make a pact with God for the land. I don't know about that, Peter. I think lots of people made pacts with their deity. Knowing his English too. Anyway, yeah, so there we go. So let me cover a little bit more news here, folks. As I mentioned, former senator and former vice president Joe Biden suddenly cares about Buy American. He's launching an economic pitch expected to anchor his fall presidential campaign. I guess if he's going to come out of the bunker at some point. Democratic candidate Joe Biden is proposing sweeping new uses of federal government's regulatory and spending power to bolster manufacturing and technology firms. Biden calls for a $400 billion four-year increase in government purchasing of U.S. goods and services. Okay, $400 billion he wants to spend in addition to the $4.5 trillion a year this government spends before COVID-19. $400 billion more. In a $23 trillion economy, $400 billion goes into $23 trillion. How many times? That's spread out over 4 years, so it's actually $100 billion per year in a $23 trillion economy. This guy is a joke. $100 billion is a figure for the state of California, not for the federal government. Plus $300 billion in new research and development U.S. technology concerns. What research? On what topics? On what areas of research? Anyway, Sleepy Joe Biden, someone put this together. The former vice president will discuss proposals Thursday at Metalworks in Dunmore, Pennsylvania. Dunmore, Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen. As a young child, I lived in Dunmore, Pennsylvania. Yep, Dunmore, Pennsylvania, the home of the Bucks. Yeah, actually, I'll bring that up sometime. I got the license plate from when I was a kid. Because Pennsylvania has one license plate. There's no plate on the front of the vehicle, so you can put whatever you want on the front. And I have a Dunmore Bucks that was blue and red. Yeah, Dunmore Bucks. So he's going to go to Dunmore. Joe Biden is originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania. That's where this evil spawn was born. And then moved to Delaware, where he corrupted politics there for decades. And now is running as Sleepy Joe as candidate for president of the United States. He proposes the federal government spend $400 billion over the course of 4 years in buying American. We already have statutes on the books that require the federal government to buy American items and also to buy from disadvantaged business, particularly minority and women-led businesses, at the expense of all business. This preferential treatment is intended to be fair, but is in fact patently unfair. In addition to that, the Buy American campaign, very difficult to buy American when nothing that we make comes from America. This whiteboard, not from America, made in China. These things were made in America until just a couple years ago. Why is it made in China? Anyway, this Samsung Galaxy tablet, made in Korea. Government uses tablets. There are no tablets manufactured in America. Where are you supposed to get tablets from? Anyway, so appreciate his Buy American. It's nice of him to wake up after decades of working to ensure that China had access to the U.S. market while denying us access to their market. Sleepy Joe and his lovely son, Hunter Biden, the drug addict, disgraced, discharged, drug-using former officer in the military, getting $1 billion from the Chinese Communist Party for the basis of nothing. We haven't even talked about Ukraine, but in China, Joe Biden going out of his way, telling us that China is not a threat. China is no danger to anyone. China is a democratic country. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you for playing, Joe. Move right along. All right, so that's Sleepy Joe Biden. Let's talk a little bit more about the news here specifically. Well, we're 31 minutes into the program, folks. You're listening to Indaba Africa on the Chris Wyatt Africa channel. And what I wanted to say is that we have a new approach to the program here today, trying something new, translating the news. And so with that, I've come up with some news themes, and chief among them is talking about the news in my opening news music. So I also have this to play for a breaking news story. So let's try this. And there you go. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control Director, says no revised school guidelines despite President Trump's push against the CDC, calling on the CDC to change its guidelines on its recommendations for opening schools. So what seems to be lost on these fanatics, these totalitarians who seem intent on ignoring science and making decisions based on their hysteria while calling everyone else a science denier, including the Centers for Disease Control. Yes. What's going on here is these folks refuse to offer guidelines that would make it possible for public schools to reopen. Now, that's distressing. Do they intend to have a generation of children even dumber than the ones that we've just gotten, who've gotten piss poor education, now simply not giving them any education, not even their own indoctrination? This is sad. So our children should be educated by TikTok and Twitter and Facebook, not teachers. Anyway, there you go. So anxious parents and educators across the country hand-wringing over, well, that's not even a proper sentence. CNN can't even write. As anxious parents and educators across the country hand-wring over how to safely bring children back to the classroom, the discord between Trump and his top health advisors over the appropriate precautions has added another layer of uncertainty. The president, against the advice of some of the nation's top health officials, has repeatedly called for schools to reopen as coronavirus cases surge. Well, of course, the reason coronavirus cases have surged is because we have an armed insurrection taking place in the United States, in which we see fanatics running through our cities, beating up citizens in the streets, looting, burning stores, throwing bricks, attacking police officers with no consequences, virtually no arrest, and being egged on and encouraged by authorities in places like Seattle, where the shameless, disgusting, vile conduct of the mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkan, should be called out for what it is, and for allowing a so declared self-autonomous zone occur in the middle of her city and abandoning and retreating from police stations. Yeah, that's right. This is why the virus is spreading like wildfire around this country. Not for other reasons. Oklahoma authorities came out and said that Donald Trump is responsible for a surge in coronavirus cases in Oklahoma. Well, perhaps. We'll see. But they sure don't talk about these other things. As I mentioned, Beyonce is now dealing with a blacklash. That's right, Beyonce, who has decided to put traditional African. Beyonce released a video celebrating African tradition. Then came the backlash, or as I call it, the blacklash. And Grace Bassey is tired of the outdated way African countries are often portrayed on American screens. So when the trailer for Beyonce's new visual album emerged on Twitter with an imagery Bassey found stereotypical face paint, feathers, animal skins, the Nigerian college student responded with images of highways, skyscrapers, and yachts. This is a constant joke that Africans wake up and see animals running around, said Bassey, 19, who studies international relations in the southwestern state of Ekiti. People are so surprised to know that we go to the spa. Well, honestly, not a huge fan of Beyonce. She can sing, but she's an arrogant ass. She's so full of herself and so wealthy and so condescending to anyone who's not in her sphere that what I'll say to this situation is that get a pair, Miss Bassey. Grow up. I'm going to have a guest on here in August, whom I know from LinkedIn, who's in public relations in South Africa. And her effort is to help change the narrative on Africa. And while I sympathize and agree with a lot of what she says, this sort of nonsense is ridiculous. So she's upset because Beyonce is paying homage to African traditions. No, listen, we don't sit around here and think that people all over Africa sit in little huts and hunt monkeys and all have HIV and have never seen electricity. But Miss Basie, 643 million Africans have no electricity. Now, that wasn't a typo. I didn't stumble. Let me use the theme music again for that so you get that. We'll emphasize that point again. Here we go. Boom. 643 million. 643 million. I got to do that one more time. I got to get this set, so I got to put it on a board so it plays it. Wait for the figure, ladies and gentlemen. She's complaining that Africa is depicted unfairly or in stereotypical fashions. Hang on, here we go. 643 million Africans. 643 million. Not 1,000, not 1.6 million. 643 million of the 1.3 billion people living on the continent of Africa have no access whatsoever. None. No access to electricity, ladies and gentlemen. That's not embellishment. That's not a stereotype. That's the factual truth. Hundreds of millions of Africans live in informal settlements or traditional huts or tin shacks. Shall I show a photograph of the road from the Cape Town airport into Cape Town? Should we look at that for a moment? By contrast, we can also show the image that's in people's minds of an outdated Southwest Townships or Soweto, in which everybody lives in a shack, which is not the case in Soweto. Not the case. But I'm sick of hearing this whining about this image about Africa being misportrayed. Shall we hide all of the things? It's like here in the United States, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Do they really matter? Then why are 78% of black children, including black children born to parents of other ethnicities, particularly white parents, why are 78% of black children born out of wedlock in a single-parent family? When we know that a nuclear family is one of the most important things to a successful upbringing and to a good start in life. 78%. But we can't discuss that. That's not germane. The 282 Americans who are black who died in police custody last year trumps all else. Not the dozens of black people who were murdered by other black people in New York City and Chicago over the weekend. We can't talk about that. No, because that would be a worldview that is incongruent with the reality. It's utter nonsense. Look, Miss Basie is a college student in Nigeria. She's 19 years old. She's just starting out in life. I appreciate her feeling as if people are attacking Africa. But she needs to open her eyes and walk around. While there are skyscrapers and electricity, and there are app writers and coders and electricians and engineers all over Africa, in many countries, in most countries, Africa has 643 million people with no electricity. 5 million people die every year from malaria. Excuse me, 5 million people get malaria every year. 620,000 people die every year from malaria. Almost all of them die in Africa. Other regions get malaria, Southeast Asia, but people don't die from malaria in large numbers like they do in Africa. Why is that? Who's telling the wrong narrative in Africa here? Africans or the rest of the world? The problem with this, in my view, stems from an inferiority complex. This complex that when anybody says anything bad about you, oh, they hate you or they're oppressing you. No, they're not hating you. They're not oppressing you. They're simply telling the truth. It's similar to LinkedIn. As I mentioned a couple times on my stream, on LinkedIn, I've had occasions twice in the past year in which somebody says, why do you only write negative things on LinkedIn? Why is everything you write about Africa is negative? And I said, really? So on both instances, I stopped what I was doing. I went back through my feed. If you're on LinkedIn, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a simple thing because LinkedIn doesn't archive and keep your things. You just have to go back chronologically. It can take forever to go through stories, to load images and news stories and things you've posted. So I went back over a week period, not even 2 weeks. And in both instances, I found a dozen different stories in which I praised things happening in Africa. I said great things about Africa. I gave examples of success, including, and this was since this COVID thing happened, it's happened again. And I did it once more, a third time. And I had posted a story about a young girl who's 9 years old who wrote a song about, protecting yourself and being safe from disease, the COVID. and she was playing on the radio stations, and she was reaching people, and people were listening to her, and people were being more judicious and paying attention to their hand sanitation as a consequence of this young lady's song. That was an uplifting thing. I published that. I put that story and commented and give analysis on LinkedIn. Yet people whine about the narrative in Africa because all they focus on is the narrative in Africa that's negative. They pay no attention to the positive stories. Those of us who try to tell positive stories and do so, it gets ignored. That's not my fault. That's her fault. That's Miss Basie's fault. So Beyonce is making a video which she mistakenly believes is an homage to Africans. So what? She's misguided. That's fine. Don't lose sleep. That's a far cry from Nancy Pelosi taking a knee like a slave and wearing kente cloth around her neck and disrespecting the Ashanti people of Ghana. Very different situation entirely. Anyway, so how's that for a rant, ladies and gentlemen? A bit of a rant there for folks. I hope you enjoyed the minor rant. Let's see. Yeah, people can't handle the truth. That's true. Yeah, Very Vision says, I need a segment called Fact Check. The problem with Fact Check, though, Very Vision, is a good title, is that you got to be really careful on that. There's a lot of fact check sites out there right now, and a lot of them are just charlatans, and I don't want to be associated with that movement right now, so I'm going to stay away from that. Cable theft, pit toilets, Soweto developed for tourism. That's true. Also, a lot of Kajris have money who live there, and so they've built up their residences and their neighborhoods. The others use candles. Well, Keith, 643 million people with no access to electricity, which means that people have to rely on charcoal, and they get respiratory diseases. It's really, really bad. We get deforestation as a consequence of charcoal production. We get all sorts of things. We get funding for terrorism as a consequence of charcoal production in Somalia, where the charcoal trade is controlled by Al-Shabaab. Yeah, not that eyesore from Cape Town. Yeah, that's an eyesore. 60% of births registered last year in Home Affairs, the mothers could not give details of the father of that child. Not surprising. Not surprising. Ben says it's not true that 643 million Africans do not have electricity. In Africa, it rains very hard. We have lightning. Okay, that's fair. Load shedding. Intermittently, because of load shedding, people can't handle the truth. That's true, Hendrik. That's the problem. Many people in America think... come on, come back. Many people in America think the Dutch still walk on clogs and it's all mills and water. Yeah, okay. It's true. It isn't? Swear DJ, it's not true. Janse van Rensberg says, also consider that 9,000 potential cancer identification surgeries per month have not been done. Yeah, well, we've talked about that on a lot of discussions here about all the medical procedures not done. So if folks might be paying attention, so I don't know if you can see it very well, but my face, I've got some sort of outbreak here. You probably can't see on the camera very well, and I've not sought medical treatment for it. Why? Because ostensibly our medical authorities are there for emergencies dealing with COVID, while other people don't. No, I'm not suffering. I'm not in pain. It's just it's not attractive looking. I don't know what it is. It's probably an allergic reaction to liberals, to leftists. Anyway, Marius Krukam, good to see you here. Welcome aboard. Kasokopa, Holland, Oranje. What's the Russian-Chinese Navy doing in Cape Town? Port calls, Daniel. It's not unusual. Navies around the world frequently do port calls. We did them all the time in New Zealand until the 1980s when New Zealand cheekily said, well, we're your allies in an alliance, but you can't bring your nuclear-powered ships to our shores. Yeah, okay. So because they don't like nuclear power in New Zealand. So, yeah, port calls are not unusual. It took a long time for the U.S. to have a port call. There was many, many years. We've had several port calls in Cape Town now. Tune says it all comes down to corrupt bureaucracy, pure Marxist tactics to have central control over everything. Then the ones at the top scoop downwards, and the line, the people starve. Yeah, it's probably true. The South African says, just tuned in. Well, welcome. Good to see you here. You missed the really cool music I'm playing. We tried something new. Keith says pit toilets and four-way stops, both great workable solutions for limited infrastructure. All of us allergic to reaction to liberals except Christian. Oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Christian, if you're here, welcome. By the way, Christian yesterday went and trolled on Ronaldo's page. And actually, what I should show you guys is this. Let me do that, actually. I'm going to bring that in. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it because it's kind of small. But on Ronaldo's stream yesterday, I went on there to watch Ronaldo's program, and I was enjoying it. And then who do we see but Christian pop on the stream? And so this is what Christian had to say for those of you who missed it on his stream. I'm going to bring this image in, and I hadn't done this ahead of time because I wasn't planning on it. So let me just get this image here very quickly and see if I can find it. Give me a second, folks. There it is. I think that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. Right. This is what Christian had to say yesterday on Ronaldo's program. All right. So for those of you, I've been very patient with Christian, but the patience is run thin, and this is why, ladies and gentlemen, right there. 242 yesterday, Christian said, guilt by association. Chris Wyatt is a racist. So Ronaldo is racist. This is the conservative view, isn't it? In his cheeky little way, it looked as though he was calling Ronaldo a racist. He clearly called me a racist. He's trying to be funny, but I don't really appreciate that sort of language. And, take off. Take off. So my moderators, if he comes on here and he starts acting the fool, you have welcome to give him a timeout. Oh, there's Christian right there. Welcome, Christian. If Christian comes on here, he starts acting a fool and calling people names like that, then you are welcome to give him a timeout. And if he comes back and behaves and contributes to the conversation, he's welcome to the conversation. I will not ban Christian yet, but I don't appreciate that nonsense, Christian. If you're trying to be funny, it wasn't funny. Calling people racist is very serious business. Now, you'll notice that when I talk about Cyril Ramaphosa, I don't call him a racist. I say his actions are racist. Yeah. Zaza, hey, good to see you. Take care of yourself. You're one of my favorite YouTubers. Well, thank you, Zaza. I really appreciate that. I hadn't heard you chat for a while. Pit toilets, the way of the future. General electricity from methane gas. Forget solar. Kyle said he's dealt with them many times. Okay. Ben says, those graves are pure. Oh, yeah, you're talking about the million graves. It's to show how the borrowed money was spent. Yeah, digging a million graves. That's the ANC has lost its freaking mind. How many people have died in South Africa from this virus so far? 3,000? 3,000 out of 220,000 people of confirmed cases, which is just a shadow of the number of people who actually have had the virus, ladies and gentlemen. Clearly, over 1 million people have had the virus, if not 2 million people in South Africa already. They just don't know that because they didn't test them, because they didn't come in. And so they have 3,000 deaths attributed to it. And they're digging 1 million graves. These people are just lunatics. Absolute lunatics. Absolute lunatics, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, let me do a bit of housekeeping, folks, for a moment here. I want to do this very quickly because I want to thank folks. Yesterday was an interesting day when we did the stream earlier. And here we go. So yesterday we had a few more members and we had some upgrades in the Chris Wyatt Africa membership. So memberships, let me just look at this very quickly. I want to make sure that I give everybody credit now. So we have, Tunes, did you just join? Did I miss that? So yesterday we had, gosh, this is a little confusing now. We said Emery Jenkins joined and Herman Ruse upgraded his membership yesterday. And we also had Tunes says joined yesterday. Okay, so there you go. So we had 3 changes in membership yesterday. Had some nice super stickers yesterday. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. But we're currently sitting on 66 members of Chris Wyatt Africa. Thank you so much for that, folks. And also thank you for your feedback on the news approach. You know, what did I call this? Debunking the news? That's not what I called it. What did I call this stream? I got to go back and look now. I forgot what I called it. Analyzing the news. Is that what I said? Yeah. It's a new idea, new concept, so it's not stuck in my head yet. Translating the news, that's what I call it. Yeah, translating the news. So this is a new concept on translating the news. Ladies and gentlemen, I already have ad suitability. It's already determined that this stream is limited in its suitability. It's not even finished. So if you're curious about whether YouTube is watching, they are watching. Because we're only 48 minutes into the stream. I've not finished the video and published it. It's just live stream, and they've determined that the suitability is limited. Do you know why the suitability is limited? Because I have the audacity to mention COVID-19. Guarantee it, that's why. They've determined that some advertisers will not want to watch or put their advertisements on the stream simply because I used that term, which is ironic because every time you go on YouTube, everywhere you go, there's a stupid ad saying, want to know about COVID-19? Push here. They push all these videos about COVID-19, but content creators are not allowed to talk about it. Whether we say something good or bad, whether we say something informative or not, whether we're fringe lunatics or we're well-informed subject matter experts, it doesn't matter. They simply limit your ability to make money off it. Fortunately, the channel's not about making money, so I'm losing about that much sleep over that concept. I just find it very comical to see how YouTube does this. They already take 45% of all ad revenue, so they're just limiting their own money. Let's see what else. Cool. Lynn is cold. Let's see what else we got here. So Garrett says, might be the ANC's plan to encourage tourism. We alone can bury a third of the world's COVID. Ooh, that's out of bounds. A little too close to home. Sean says they're global puppets who'll feed the taxpayers to the wolves. They have no conscience. I agree. Probably giving tenders. Yeah, I'm sure it's a BEE tender that's in place here. Ben says, I'm a detective. My table are several suicide dockets and others who die from unnatural causes where death certificates are issued as the term we are not allowed to use. Pure corruption. Absolutely, Ben. Yeah, no, it's true. It's lunacy. Wonderland escaped me. The first time I ever hear you comment and you say my suitability is limited due to grooming. They'll be more lenient after a haircut. Perhaps. But if they don't give me the ad revenue, how am I going to afford a haircut? I'm a pensioner. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm retired from active service, not from life and not from work, but from active service after 36 years in the Army, 36 and a half years in the Army. Yeah. 1.5 million graves. Yeah. Anyway, so let's see if I had some more news I want to talk about. Oh, yes, this is some more news. So here's some more breaking news. Okay, I got to figure out how to do this quickly. So here we go. All right, we're going to bring it up now. Ready? Here we go. Come on, go back. This thing is not working nice. Okay, play again. And there you go. Former Fox News anchor Shepard Smith joins CNBC to host the evening newscast. Well, congratulations to gasbag, self-important, ever-preening, woefully out of touch pseudo-journalist Shepard Smith, whose sole task in life is to denigrate Donald Trump. And it's people like this that made me give Donald Trump a second look as I watched this gasbag's disgusting and vile lies spewed every day, reported as news, claiming to be news, but it was just opinion. So the news with Shepard Smith is comical. I suspect that I will not be watching this program because I know that it will not be the news. You notice I call this section translating the news. I didn't call it the news because I'm offering opinion. But of course, Shepard Smith is dishonest. And so welcome to CNBC. CNBC, the cable news business network, is owned by NBC, which is owned by Comcast, which is my internet service provider, providing Xfinity services. I am a shareholder of Comcast. Comcast is run by a bunch of leftist lunatics whose objective is to not report the news in their news division. Now, I've been to their headquarters in New York, and we've met with their news director at MSNBC and met with one of the leading journalists, and they profess to be confused as to why people think that they're biased and they're not objective in the news reporting. Yeah, I heard this 3 years in a row. Now, I'm not going to mention the people I talk to because they're decent people. They mean well, but they're blinded by their circumstances. They cannot objectively look at what they do and don't do on MSNBC. Anyway, had a good experience up there, though, walking through it. And it's easy to understand how people get caught in this bubble and they behave the way they do when you actually see these things. So now here's the really big news, ladies and gentlemen. This is made the BBC, so it must be big news. All right. Now, this is going to get old because I keep doing this, but let me do it again one more time. Here we go. There we go. U.S. student visas. A lot of people I know are scared for the future. So the Trump administration has issued guidelines to the Department of Homeland Security and to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, directing them to look at the visas for foreign students at U.S. universities and colleges and technical programs who are not attending school in person. In other words, they had a visa, they came to the United States, and they will not attend classes in person. Now, in normal times, I would say that I have no objection to this policy whatsoever, because if you enroll in a distance education course, now I've done two graduate programs on my 3 by distance education. If you're enrolled in a distance education program, then why do you need to be in the United States? If you're taking courses through Harvard and you're from Germany, then you can do it distance education from Germany. There's no difference. Now, if you're from Benin, you have no bandwidth and no reliable electricity, that's a different story. But that's on the university. That's their responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the United States to be a host for someone in that circumstance. But this is the situation here. This is a consequence of the Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19. That's right. I said Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19. Make sure you've got that for the unsuitability for this broadcast. Yes. So the virus is the prompting factor here, plus the armed insurrection taking place in many metropolitan cities around the United States as mayors and governors sit back and fail to do their primary mission, which is to provide for public safety and domestic tranquility. So the administration has said that if you are here, or if you intend to come here and not take classes in person, then you will not be allowed to come here. Nothing wrong with that. So why would people fly to the United States, risking their health on a plane if this pandemic is so damaging, so dangerous, to go through an airport, to travel on public transport, to get to a university, to be in a dormitory, and to put yourself at risk, and then you isolate yourself and do distance learning. Why don't you just do the distance learning home in Luanda, or in Soweto, or in Kampala, or in Berlin, or in Beijing? Why? Why must you come here? Now, the real problem, the practical problem with this is that the only issue I take with this policy is the following. I think that what should happen with this policy is that the federal government should not apply it in a blanket approach. They should look at students who were here with the intent of attending university in person, but the callow, feckless, cowardly, I guess it's redundant, callow and cowardly are pretty much the same thing, but the callow conduct of university officials and their refusal to set up in-person courses because of their unscientific hysteria and fears over this virus means that students can't attend courses in person. That's the university's fault and university responsibility. But students who intended to come here and who would previously, say you're a junior and you've spent 2 years here and you've attended courses and now you're going back to Harvard or Northwestern, MIT, 3 of the litigants in this case, and you go back to course and the school says we're not having in class, no one can come to class, you have to do it by distance education. In those cases, we should allow those students to continue to be here. They're already here. Why should we put them at risk by putting them on a plane and flying them back through an airport on a plane to another country where they could become infected? Just leave them in place. If you're here and you have a valid visa, you stay in place. We had this happen at the Army War College where students who graduated in May, couldn't go home. There's no flights. And their visas were expiring because their visas only cover the time they're here, plus a couple weeks after that for travel. So they had to get emergency provisions to allow them to stay longer, and that did happen. We can do the same thing for this policy. We can allow students who are already here to continue to study distance within the country. That makes sense. But this lawsuit, to me, is not focused on the right approach. It's wrong-minded, it's typical leftist drivel, and it attacks administration, and it claims that it's reckless, and it's cruel. It's not cruel. It's not reckless. It's crueler to allow students who are 18 years old, fresh-faced, to fly here from Honduras to attend a university only to get infected because they went through an airport or through an airport here, and they went on campus, and they had to go get a house, they had to go get a dormitory, they had to see people physically do all this. They don't have any life or home here, and they come here, and then they die here remotely, thousands of miles from their family, from a virus that there was no reason for them to be here when their university wasn't even offering in-person classes in the first place. You could only attend class by distance. So attend distance from a distance. Anyway, I will say this. I don't think it's the wisest of policy approaches for the Trump administration to be undergoing this at this moment. There are bigger fish to fry, like insurrectionists who need to be captured, printed, photographed, booked, charged, tried, convicted, and imprisoned. That's a bigger concern right now. That's a bigger concern than student visas in my book. So I take issue with it too, but not for the reason that these folks are saying. Now, I want to show you guys a video. Let me see if I can get this to come up here. This one's hilarious. I really like this one. So give me a second here. I think this is actually like in South Africa, to be honest, folks. So let's see if I can get this to come up. We got the sound on. The sound is on. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to turn myself off and watch this one, folks. It's a very short one, but we're going to talk about this. Okay, here we go. I got to turn my camera off for this one. Or no, I don't have to turn my camera off. Here we go. Browser. Here we go. All right, so watch this. I'll play that again. One more time. It's so short, we got to see it one more time. Here we go. Getting out of the car, thinking he's all cool, pulls a gun on a guy, and guess what? He's armed, shoots, and runs away like a little bitch that he is. Now, that's getting play here in the United States on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen, but obviously one has to imagine that's in South Africa based on the fact that the guy was driving on the wrong side of the car. Wrong side of the car. Also, the terrain that you see there, the layout, two dudes just standing around the street. Yeah. I read today that a farmer in South Africa who shot and killed a farm attacker who was intent on killing him has been arrested and charged with murder. Seriously? So you're only allowed to be slaughtered like sheep. You can't defend yourself. This is nonsense. Utter nonsense. Yep. That's awesome. Yeah, Pinar says lovely. I agree. Yeah, the right to keep and bear arms should be a universal right for people who are capable of bearing arms. Not just anybody, people bearing arms. So, folks, thank you for tuning in. I'm not running off. I just want to say very quickly that it's the top of the hour, so I just want to go through very quickly, do this whole thing again. Here we go. Welcome to Indaba Africa. This is Translating the News with Chris Wyatt, coming to you from central Pennsylvania, talking today about news events around the world focused on the U.S. and Africa. Today, U.S. and South Africa in particular. And we've had quite a few events taking place, including the Supreme Court of the United States, determining that virtually all of eastern Oklahoma is Native American land for certain purposes. What does that mean? Who knows? But it throws into question the jurisdiction and the control of the state of Oklahoma over much land, 3 million acres, in which only 15% of the population is actually Native American. This all arose from a court case in which a young man was convicted of raping a 4-year-old. This is why the case came up. A 4-year-old raped a 4-year-old and received a 1,000-year sentence. Decided to appeal the conviction, saying that the state of Oklahoma prosecutor had no authority to prosecute him for raping a toddler. Only the federal government could charge him with that crime. Well, now we have an entire situation in Oklahoma that raises all kinds of questions about jurisdiction in Oklahoma. In addition, Joe Biden, the presumptive, desirable, Democratic hopeful running for office, Sleepy Joe Biden, now says that buying American is a keystone of his policy. And he says that the federal government should purchase $400 billion of goods and services from only American providers over a period of 4 years. Apparently, Joe was asleep and didn't realize that this is already the law of the land, that the federal government must buy American to begin with. So curious that he has that to say. Additionally, other events taking place around the world include the Center for Disease Control right here in the United States saying that they will not adjust policy for school reopening here in the United States. And in South Africa, former Protea stars Deepanar and Sim Cox have gone off about Black Lives Matter and cricketers dragging this nonsense into the sport of cricket. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you like the new approach, something different we're trying here on Chris Wyatt Africa. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It's just after the top of the hour here on the East Coast of the United States, 1 p.m. in Pennsylvania, and it is, that would make it 7 p.m. in South Africa and in Botswana. Dumela Botswana, Sawubona, South Africa, and welcome to Chris Wyatt Africa, translating the news. Anyway, so that's some of the news stories we've talked about here so far on the program. I'm going to go a little bit longer, and then I'll probably do a stream later today. Brett's here. Welcome. Okay. Why is China smoking their tea? They're claiming 21 countries as their own. Yeah. The Chinese will never stop, folks. Harry, is Harry here? Hey, Harry, welcome back. Oh, Harry saw that video yesterday. Good to see you, Harry. Always drop the charge after investigation. Oh, Garrett says it's the correct side. You guys always mount horses from the left. Yeah. Right. That's how you get in a car, on the left side, and you drive it. I missed a lot of comments here. You guys are talking about some things going on here. Okay, what else we got here? Missed something there. Serbia. What's going on with Serbia? Why are you just talking about Serbia? Okay. Hungary, Serbia. Oh, you're looking for places to run off to? Okay. Daryl Crouch. Hello. Good to see you there. Rosalind Gerber. Hello. Welcome, Rosalind. I don't recall seeing you here before. Welcome to Chris Wyatt Africa. You're most welcome to join us in this community and chat about events going on around the world, particularly in Africa and the United States, but especially with a focus on South Africa. He ran away quicker than the ANC can run away from accountability. Ooh, Hendrik, that's very good. I like that. And then Marbani sharing, Morton Christie says it is South Africa and it's not recent either, more than a year old. Yeah, I think so. I saw that previously too. No, but this guy, Art Taking Back, as a black American who's hot full of all this nonsense with Black Lives Matters. And this guy posts a lot of videos from all over the world, and they're all really good ones. Native Americans were treated badly in the history of the USA, but many Native American tribes were at war with each other before white settlers arrived. Well, true, Brett, in both instances, but that's not really the topic here, Jermaine. The topic is jurisdiction over federal land and or Native American reservations. And in this case, the Supreme Court has decided that the federal government alone has jurisdiction over approximately 1/3 of eastern Oklahoma. Actually, 3 million acres. And so they've decided that do that. But the problem with that is that that land has been settled many times over with federal dispensation on this taking place in the 19th century. So it kind of flies in the face of previous law. And what the Supreme Court is saying is that it's up to the federal government to change law. Why? To change law, to match this? Your argument here, your job here as the Supreme Court is to adjudicate things based on the Constitution, not based on your views. Anyway, Kyle says, great music and pace. Well, thank you so much for that, Kyle. I think I'm going to do it there. Tunes is taking off. Well, have a good night. You're off to bed early. Must have a lot of work. Good to see Harry back again. Glad you're here. SCOM threatening load shedding. Big surprise there, not. Please like and subscribe. Yeah, folks, if you're just tuning into the program or you're not a regular viewer on here, please check out. Sorry, I got distracted by Christian's comment, and I'll address that in a second. But please feel free to subscribe to the channel if you've not done it. It doesn't cost anything to be a subscriber, and we're happy to have you a subscriber. And if you subscribe, you might as well go to the extra step of grabbing that little bell icon and just toggling that thing so you get notified of all updates. And if it's too many in your box, then just go back and change it later on and reduce it. But become a subscriber. It costs nothing, and you can follow the events, the discussions we talk about here. On this channel, I bring my 36 and a half years of experience as a U.S. military soldier and officer, and as a regional specialist for Africa, and someone who's run all sorts of programs from peacekeeping, combat, to national intelligence, to HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, development, all sorts of things. I bring all those things to bear as we discuss these topics. And my experience at living all over the world, including living in 8 different countries in Africa, Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Nigeria, Mauritania, Uganda, Ethiopia, and that's all of them. Did I say Malawi? And as well as traveling to over 30 plus, nearly 40 countries in Africa, having lived in Europe, 3 different tours in Germany and Italy, and 3 tours in Germany, 1 tour in Italy, and then also having traversed the world for my profession and the different things I do. I'm a published author and former academic, having taught undergraduate at Iowa State University and taught postgraduate at the U.S. Army War College. So all that comes into play when we discuss topics here on Chris White Africa. So thank you for coming in. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you might want to consider, if you want to support the channel, if you find it interesting, you're welcome to do that. We have membership on Chris White Africa, and we currently have 66 members. And we just opened this up about 3 weeks ago. So thank you so much. Not even a month, we got 66 members. Really happy about that. Thank you all so much for that support. Appreciate it. And then if you're curious, people ask me all the time about, if you want to support the channel, how can you do it? I made a video about subscriptions and memberships and super chats and super stickers and all those different things and how you can do it and how you can't do it. It's on a video I did recently. So check it out. That's about a 16-minute video or something like that. And you can learn all about those things, which apply not just to this channel, but to all channels on YouTube. So you can check it out and see what interests you or what does not interest you. So there you go. Right. Skulk says, good night to you and fellow chatters here. Until next time. Skulk is gone now too. Okay, take care. Brett, why is the AIDS pandemic such a problem in Africa? I don't think that sexual contact is the main reason. I think that knife fights and inadequate methods. No, actually, that's a good question, Brett. Let me talk about that one. I'll come back to it. But I want to see Christian's comment. Christian just heard the Supreme Court ordered Trump to hand over his financial records. Trump, Christian, how did you just hear that? I've mentioned it 4 times in the last hour on the stream. You're not listening to the stream, or you jumped in late. Yeah, Anthony says, do you see the latest South Africa? Shwana suspends ambulance service after operating license turned out. You're talking about private operators, right? That's insane. Absolutely insane. Although, ostensibly, I would guess that one of the reasons they're doing it is maybe the ambulances aren't safe. If you've ridden in a combi in South Africa, you'll know what I'm talking about. That might be the case. That might be what's happening here. So, yeah, I think we need to know more on that, Anthony, before we get upset about what Shwana did. Shwana might have done the right thing. But yes, Christian, you can dance your Miposian dance of joy, make the rain fall. The Supreme Court has wrongly determined that the President of the United States, sitting President of the United States, whether his name is Barack Hussein Obama or Donald Trump, can have frivolous lawsuits brought against them by state and local authorities to interfere with their charge and mission as a chief executive. So this is bad news for the Republic, and we will now see into perpetuity every single president facing frivolous lawsuits for everything under the sun and not allowed to do their job and focus on it. Thankfully, we have a president who has the energy and ability to actually do that and ignore that nonsense. So celebrate all you want there, Christian. It's not good news for the Republic. ESCOM is sleeping during lockdown. They have 13 weeks to do maintenance and fix output. Absolutely right. What about schools? Well, you can't open schools. They have to be cleaned. What have you been doing for the last 3 months? Why aren't these schools clean? Oh, I know. I'm sorry. Because you allow them to be vandalized or burned to the ground. And oh, by the way, the virus can't survive for 3 months. If nobody's been in the schools for 3 months, Why is it a problem to reopen schools? The virus is dead. There'll be no virus alive. These aren't anthrax spores. These aren't tardigrades that can survive in space for decades with no water. Come on. Come on, man. All right. That's like saying KwaZulu tribal land is beyond national legislation. Yeah, exactly. Lots of vaccines then. Good. Okay, Brett says, yeah, the AIDS epidemic. So let me talk about that. Okay, so. Well, Serbians aren't the only ones. Malawi, the courts ordered that the lockdown that the government imposed under Peter Mutharika was unlawful and unconstitutional, and they stopped it. So there's never been a lockdown in Malawi, and the number of people in the cases is strikingly small. Taiwan never had a lockdown. They simply closed their borders and handled things in a rational fashion, continued school, and they only have a handful of cases in a country of 24 million, half the size of South Africa, and don't even have 1,000 cases, less than 500, and less than double digits in deaths in Taiwan. Singapore did a similar situation. This nonsense from these people who claim to believe in science and then disregard science is, yeah, they think it's the bubonic plague. You are correct. Right. Elizabeth, we can't say the black plague because that would be racist. But yeah, the bubonic plague, that's what they think. 75 million people died in a span of about 18 months, 2 years, something like that, in 1349 from the black plague. This is not the black plague. Okay, so back to Brett's question. Brett said, why is the AIDS pandemic such a problem in Africa? Okay, now you've just said something else, Brett. So in African Europe play anything but soccer. Okay, I'm going to get to your AIDS question first, Brett. Okay, so Brett's question about AIDS. Let's talk about this. So back in 2000, when I was traversing across Africa, getting paid for it by the Army to become more familiar with the continent, and I got to travel throughout the continent, now I wasn't required to do this, but I thought it was prudent to come up with a research question. So my research question, particularly in Southern Africa, but in all of Africa, was what will the impact of HIV be holistically on society? And so that's what I looked at. So as a consequence of that, I went all over the place. So when I went to Botswana, I wanted to visit the Botswana Christian AIDS Intervention Program, BOCEP, which the head of the program was based in Gaborone, but he was from Kampala. He was a Ugandan who had lived through the experience that Uganda had in the 1980s when HIV devastated entire villages. I remember seeing video footage of news reports in Uganda in like 1986, 1987, and they go in these villages, and the only people alive are old people, grandparents, and a bunch of children, because all the parents had died from HIV. And I was like, wow. So Museveni's government came in, and one of the things they did is they addressed HIV head on from the outset and went after it. And they made tremendous inroads and greatly reduced the incidence of HIV in the country and got things on the right path. Now, that has changed in recent history, but it's still not a disaster like it once was. But what happened as a consequence is a lot of people involved in those programs became subject matter experts in how best to confront the pandemic. So you saw Ugandans traveling all over the continent to countries that were afflicted. In Botswana, they went there, and the director was Ugandan. So I tried to get an appointment with him on my trip, couldn't get it. So later I was in Maun, up in the Okavango Delta, and at the base of the Delta. And I was there, and I saw a sign that said the Botswana Christian AIDS Intervention Program. I'm like, wow, that was the program I was trying to interview the guy for. So here we are in a more remote town of about 50,000, kind of a dusty cattle post town on the edge of one of the world's premier tourist sites. And I rocked up to the place. I came in, and my colleague was with me, and he didn't have a research focus for his trip, but his travels, but I did. So I said, why don't you come with me? Maybe we can learn something together. So we went in, and there was a Danish woman who was there, and I introduced myself. I handed her my business card, which I produced, which had my name, my email address with GeoCities, and it said that I was in the U.S. Army. And I showed her my ID card, and we talked. And then during the course of the conversation, she said, let me get this right. So you're in the American Army, and you're here in Botswana, and you're curious about HIV. This is 2000, ladies and gentlemen, not 2015, not 2020, 2000. You're curious. I was a captain. You're curious about this. I said, yes, ma'am, I am. Why are you curious about it? I said, well, because to me, this is a virus and a disease that is insidious and could have devastating effects here in Africa. I'm very concerned about some developments. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, for instance, in Southern Africa, you have this long-established, long-distance truck driving routes. And truck drivers are gone for days and weeks away from their family. And they tend to congregate at border crossings like Kazungulu in Botswana, between Zambia and Botswana on the Chobe River. The Kazungulu crossing, where people can sit for several days. I said, when people sit there, truck drivers, nothing to do except drink a few beers and then hook up with young ladies, and people tend not to use condoms, you've got a real problem here. So I think the long-distance truck routes are going to contribute to this virus getting a foothold in this region, which was just starting to get attention in Southern Africa. And I said, that's one problem. I said, the other problem is historically in Southern Africa, particularly in South Africa, you have this long tradition of migrant labor. So people come from the rural countrysides into the Midrand to work in the gold mines, and then later the platinum mines came later, but all these mines. And then what happens is you also have workers coming from Lesotho, from Mozambique, from Botswana, from Zambia, from Malawi, who come here in the hundreds of thousands, and they're isolated from the family. Well, let's just be honest, folks. People, men isolated from the family don't always behave well. And so a lot of them live in flop houses or dormitories, and they sleep with prostitutes or have girlfriends, don't use protection, they get infected. They take it back to their home villages in the rural area when they go to visit a couple times a year, and this will spread it. I said those things. And then the other thing, now this is one I didn't really know at the time, but learned later, is that, see, there's a lot of angst about this. Thabo Mbeki's fragile little ego is that, well, it's just racist to claim that this is caused by a virus. This is just Western white people who are trying to dictate to black men about their sexual conduct. That was Thabo Mbeki's take on it. Well, what we later found out is that on average, Africans have roughly the same number of sexual partners as the average person in the West. Now, there's no such thing as average. You look at all the numbers. But what happens is that it is very common in much of Africa for people to have multiple concurrent partners. So in your lifetime, let's say you sleep with 5 different people, whether you're in New York or you're in Gaborone. But a lot of people in Gaborone will tend to sleep with 2 or 3 at the same time, having multiple concurrent because of the social dynamics. So when you sleep with multiple people at the same time, your chances of spreading infection are greatly enhanced. Now, I didn't know that in 2000, but I knew there's other things. And I said, I'm worried about that. Also, I'm worried about poverty and the fact that lack of education. People don't know how this virus spreads. So in the United States, it was the gay disease or hemophiliac disease because people were ignorant and arrogant. And we only later discovered or proved that this virus could be spread through heterosexual contact. And then, so these are the things that came into play. And I made this argument, and I was talking to this Danish lady, and she's like, I'm okay, but I'm really confused. Why would you care about this in the Army? I said, well, because if people are dramatically affected by this, it has an impact on productivity. It's a drag on an economy. Economy slows down because people are sick and or their family members are sick and they have to provide treatment for them. If people die in large numbers, in parts of Africa, a funeral is not a one-day event. In many parts of Africa, a funeral lasts for an entire week. It's like a wedding. Weddings last a week in many places. So if people have to disappear because their cousin died, their sister died, their brother died, their aunt died, they're going to be gone all the time. I said, all of this is going to damage, and it has a much bigger impact. And then I said, but the thing I'm worried about in places like Botswana is this. This disease, and I said this in 2000, this disease affects disproportionately the educated, the wealthy. In other words, those who can get access and have the ability to find partners. If you are wealthy, even if you're hideous looking, you can be appealing to a partner of the opposite sex because they want wealth or they want to share in your comfort. And so what happens is that if 10 bankers in New York get HIV and die from it, that's tragic. If 10 bankers get HIV and die in Gaborone, a city of 300,000 at the time, 350,000, 10 bankers, and there's only probably a few hundred bankers in the town, the loss of those 10 bankers or that government official or that minister or that teacher is devastating to a country that has very little in the way of human capital. Botswana has limited human capital, and by extension, South Africa the same way. So losing people to a disease like this that don't have to die and should never die, should never be exposed, has catastrophic consequences. So all that is the argument. So this has nothing to do with medical centers and devices. That's not really how the disease is propagated in Southern Africa, particularly in South Africa. So Brett, I hope that answers the question. It was rather complicated. But by the way, that's stuff I said in 2000, by the way, not 2020. So with the exception of the one part about the multiple concurrent partners. I didn't really learn about that until about 2006, 2007. Yep. Christian says the AIDS pandemic is because religious groups advocating abstinence only and demonized contraception. No, it's not. Utter nonsense. That's a myth. That's a fairy tale, Christian. That's the same nonsense. I was at a Kaiser Foundation meeting in Washington, D.C. right after PEPFAR was created. And this is what happened, ladies and gentlemen. So let me talk about this very quickly to answer Christian's comment there. So here's the deal. I went to a Kaiser Foundation meeting. Now, the Kaiser Foundation is from the Kaiser Aluminum Company. The family donated lots of money. It's a huge foundation. It does lots of medical research. They do wonderful things. So the Kaiser Foundation held this big discussion. I went to this, and This was in D.C., and I was working at the Pentagon at the time. So I went there and listened to this conversation, and there were several gay activists who got up who were upset. They were up in arms. They nazafol, hot full of this whole thing. They were angry. What were they angry about? Well, they were angry because they were upset that the Bush administration was going to dedicate money to abstinence and contraception because it doesn't work, completely disregarding the success that abstinence and contraception had in Uganda. Now, that was a one-off case, and it may have worked there for one reason. It wouldn't work elsewhere, but that's not the point. My point, I listened to this young, middle-aged gay man get up and whine about this, complain, this is wrong. This is just wrong. They're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. And I said, excuse me, how about you take your victories and be happy about it? And he looked at me with this incredulous look. What do you mean? And I said, well, and I was answering the crowd. I said, here's the thing. The U.S. government to date has spent, before this program was created, something in the order of about $623 million in aggregate total for HIV since the 1980s. That's research into a virus, that's treatment, that's awareness campaigns, $623 million. That's it. 1985 to 2003, about $623 million. This administration, with bilateral support, or bipartisan, not bilateral, bilateral, bipartisan support, has just agreed to spend $3 billion fighting HIV. $1 billion for abstinence and contraception, $1 billion for awareness, and $1 billion for treatment and pursuing a vaccine. So you just got $2 billion, which is 3 times the total amount of money ever spent on HIV in the United States and the entire world. This is to be spent abroad. Most of the countries that are going to benefit from this are in Africa. What are you bitching about and whining and moaning about the fact that they're going to spend money on abstinence because you think it's a waste of money? Take your victory and be happy. Take your victory lap. $2 billion. By the way, the initial program for 5 years at $3 billion per year would have been $15 billion. Congress actually allocated, and President Bush actually signed $45 billion of assistance in those 5 years. The program was renewed. When it was renewed the second time, they determined they wanted to take some of the money and use it for tuberculosis and malaria. Fine. But they allocated another $45 billion for 5 years. So only $39 billion of that went towards HIV. $45 billion and $39 billion. I'm not going to do the math. And that was renewed a third time. We have now spent more money on the president's emergency, not enduring, but emergency program for AIDS relief than the Marshall Plan. Yet this week I hear African politicians whining, we need a Marshall Plan for Africa after COVID-19. Really? Are these the same people that are arguing we need to change the narrative about Africa? Now they want money, they want aid, they want handouts. I'm not arguing against aid or for it. I'm just making the obvious point of the hypocrisy going on here. So there you go, folks. There you go. That's just, anyway, so yeah, a little bit off track there. Erica says, it took me a while to get through to our farm workers and get them to work with me for reference to HIV. At one stage, we had someone dying every few months. Yeah, and what happens to your productivity, Erica? The guy is dying or sick, he can't work. And if he's not, if someone has families, they got to disappear for the funeral or to take care of family responsibilities. It destroys productivity. It destroys social fabric. And it is devastating to watch people die from this. So a little prevention goes a long way, Christian. A long way. That's where I would start, is because Christian mentioned that. I skimmed past the grace because I think it's a stunt. It's a stunt. Stella Mons has put the medal up there. Well, thank you so much for that. I like that little cool medal. How long is your lockdown? How long is your lockdown? You must get a Davy Crockett hat with a tail. Those were all the rage. My parents' age. That they love that. Herman says, "Hi all. Sorry I was on the end of a past week. I just heard today that we should start prepping for possible 50% cut in our tobacco production. We can only. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Sorry to hear that, Herman. Okay. Sell tobacco to British American Tobacco. So long as the ban on tobacco stays, smaller the portion of us. Jeez. Morton Christie says farmers should set up their own cigarette factory. Maybe they should. Urgent warning about gunfire, automatic weapon on the N3. Oh my goodness. Someone take a look at that. How much credit does Marshall Plan deserve for Europe's post-war recovery? Harley, it deserves a lot. Europeans deserve a lot of credit for rebuilding, especially Germans and who rebuilt their cities. Old, people, pensioners who walked around with wheelbarrows and picked up the bricks and loaded them up as they were moved out of the city. You go outside of Cologne in the central part of Germany, and there's entire hills outside of the town. They're not natural hills. They were built from rubble from the bombing the Allies did in Cologne during the Second World War. The Western Europeans owe a lot of their recovery to their own energy and drive and efforts. But the funding, the food relief came from the United States. It never would have happened without it. So the Marshall Plan deserves a lot of credit. But the Marshall Plan was a pretty impressive program. The good news for us, which a lot of people don't realize, is that the United States never could have completed the Marshall Program if the Soviet Union and the East Bloc countries had taken us up on our offer. We offered it to all European countries, including the Soviet Union. But because of the burgeoning Cold War conflict, the Soviet Union decided that they weren't going to take the money, and the East Bloc countries wouldn't dare take money when they weren't going to take it. So that's fortunate because we didn't have enough money to cover all of Europe. So we had enough money to cover Western Europe. So the Marshall Plan deserves a lot of credit, absolutely. If nothing else, let's pretend that the money wasn't that a major factor. It created a structure and a guarantee and a promise that there was a safety net there to help rebuild. Now, I did far more than that, but if it did only that enough would have been sufficient to make it a successful program. But it was pretty amazing, the Marshall Program. Remember, Marshall was Secretary of State. He was the general, 4-star general, in charge of the Army. And that's what happened. Hypotherapy. Chris, you claim to have been in the Army, but can't find you on Facebook, Twitter to confirm. Christian, you're not looking very hard on Twitter because my Twitter handle is in the description of the channel. I've mentioned it dozens of times. And also, why would you look for me on Facebook to be in the Army? Look for me on a professional site like LinkedIn. Simple as that. So anyway, Christian's a funny guy. Anyway, he's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I don't know where he gets his nonsense from. But yeah, let me see if we can do something here. Let me find a historic picture here. If I can find one, I'll bring up for you guys. Okay, one that I wouldn't mind folks seeing. Hang on. Here we go. All right. Here we go. Yeah, that one will probably work. Let's do that one. You guys are going to like this one. Okay, let me bring this one up. Since Christian is trolling and having fun here. Christian, I don't claim. I state facts. There's no claim here. It's a fact. Right. All right, so let's pull this one up here very quick. I was going to go off the air, but let me just do this very quickly. So we're going to have a little fun with Christian here. Let me get your feedback on this one, guys. ETH ID. This is from when I was a young soldier, a long time ago. Okay, it's on my desktop now, so there it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. There's Sergeant Chris Wyatt in 1987. There you go. How you like that? Sloth Puppy says Christian's irritating. Yeah, Christian's, I think, 12 years old, and his mother lets him online sometimes. She gives him data, so he gets to go online. Check it out. Yeah, EduTube says, yeah, there's so much information about me on the net. Yeah, where I went to school. You can find videos of me in uniform giving presentations. You can find news reports on Voice of America, France 24, News 24. You can find Wall Street Journal articles about me. You can find endless list of things about me if you want. Tons of stuff out there. Anyway, so yeah, Christian is trolling. But anyway, so there's the photo, folks. What do you think? Black and white. Yeah. No, what this was is I was on the color guard for the 8th Infantry Division back in Germany, back in the 1980s. And I was a sergeant at the time. And those are dress blues. And you can see I had a little bit of sad, fuzzy mustache growing there. But that is me in 1987. So I would have been about 23 then. 24. Yeah, 23. Almost 24. Yeah, look at that. Do I look like I'm 24 years old? Yeah. That's a long time ago. Yeah, that's me wearing dress blues and infantry brass and an infantry ribbon. So in interest of full disclosure, I was not an infantry soldier. I just wore that because that was a requirement. All of us on the division color guard for the 8th Infantry Division were required to wear infantry uniform. So we wore the infantry brass and the infantry cord over the shoulder, even though I wasn't infantry. This was taken at a rehearsal ceremony for the birthday celebration of the 8th Infantry Division. And I was standing next to the wall. I didn't even know the photo was being taken. And so it's one of my favorite photos. It's really cool because it's just kind of a look off there. So yeah, there I am. Anyway, I hope you guys like that. Anyway, so there you go. That's I figured I'd share that one instead of a more recent one. Michelle says, what did they do? Time machine. Yeah, let's all hop in a time machine. Yeah, I'd like to go back to that year. I'd like to go back to that time and have my accumulated experience and my rands and shekels that are sitting in the bank now compared to then. Back then, at that time, I was making about $998 $5 a month US. Yeah, wasn't a lot of money. That was before taxes and my contributions to my education account. Chevrons are upside down. No, the chevrons are right side up. Just like people in the Commonwealth driving on the wrong side of the road, Commonwealth countries also wear their chevrons the wrong way. Chevrons face up. We aspire to achieve, not to go down. Chevrons are not the wrong way. Yep. Anyway, let's see what else we got here. So the good old days. Yeah. 1987, ladies and gentlemen, we had the Cold War. We had Ronald Reagan. We had prosperity the world over. We had about 3 billion less people on the planet. It was good times. Yep. Holy crap. Ek was 5 rand per dog betal. Fun. Yeah. And here's a bit longer, soldier. It is now, that's for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, we all feel like that. Wish we had our wisdom when we were young. Youth wasting young. Well, I didn't waste my youth. I made good use of it. I mean, that's how you get these experiences, how you learn. But I certainly was a different person. It was a different time. So, right, folks. Okay, so Christian, there you go. You're looking for stuff. There you go. There's a picture. Anyway, enjoy that. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to go ahead and drop off because I think I'll come back on later on and do the normal stray voltage at 9:35, and so I'll publish that, but I'm going to take off. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the feedback on the news thing. So let me play that music on the way out because it's kind of cool music. Where's it at? Oh, now I've lost it. Intros and outros. Let me get back to that. It is this one here. No, it's that one. Here we go. So I'm going to play the music on the way out, if it'll ever start. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. This is Chris on Indaba Africa. Thank you so much for tuning in to Translating the News today on this different approach to the stream. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it being with you guys today, talking about this strange decision from the Supreme Court of the United States determining that much of eastern Oklahoma is Native American land for certain purposes, not for ownership, which is going to create all kinds of chaos in Oklahoma and potentially around the United States. So we'll see what happens from there. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. I will be back in a couple of hours, about 2 hours for Stray Voltage. Thanks so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Really, oh, Daryl was probably a corporal about that time. Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate your presence here on Indaba Africa. God bless, and we'll